In the heart of Mauritania's endless desert, where no tree grows and the wind carves the stones for thousands of years, there lies a place unlike anything else on Earth. A massive circle, more than 50 kilometers wide, so vast it can be seen from space. A circle so perfect it seems as if it was not made by nature, but by design. They call it the Eye of the Sahara, or the Richat Structure. From orbit, it looks like the fingerprint of another world, concentric rings spiraling toward a silent center, etched into the crust of the planet like an ancient symbol, or a gateway to something unseen. Around it stretches the dead desert, waves of sand, ridges of stone, but at its core, there is a strange stillness, a presence, almost alive. For decades, scientists dismissed it as nothing more than a geological oddity, a dome of rock eroded by time, carved by rain and wind over millions of years. Nothing mysterious, nothing man made. Until one researcher, neither archaeologist nor historian, overlaid Plato's description of Atlantis onto the map of the Sahara. And the rings aligned, one by one, three rings of land divided by water, mountains to the west, an opening to the sea. Every detail matched. Even the orientation, north, south, east, and west, fit perfectly with the words written 24 centuries ago. Plato called it an island, but perhaps he was wrong about just one thing. Maybe it was never an island in the sea, but a continent in the heart of Africa, where once there were tropical oceans and now only dust and heat. If that's true, then Atlantis didn't sink beneath the waves. It dried into sand, because once this land was not a desert. Ancient maps show that thousands of years ago, the Sahara was green. Rivers flowed, lakes shimmered, animals roamed, and people lived here. Today, satellites reveal the traces of those rivers, all leading toward the center of the eye, as if once there had been a harbor or a city built around water. Imagine it, a city of concentric rings, stone walls glistening under the sun, canals filled with ships, gardens and temples rising on every terrace. Then, catastrophe, floods, storms, fire, and the sea retreating, leaving nothing but silence. Now there is nothing here, only wind moving through stones. But when you look from above, it feels as though the place looks back at you, a circle in the sand that remembers more than history itself. Some scientists still call it coincidence, a natural formation that happens to resemble a legend. But others believe this is exactly what great disasters leave behind. First a city, then the sea, then the desert, and finally memory fading with time. Perhaps this is where the answer lies. Beneath the wind, inside the dust, hidden in plain sight. Where once there was life, and now there is only the whisper of a story too old to die. Every civilization leaves a mark. Some vanish beneath the ocean. Others keep watching from the sand. This is the eye of the Sahara, silent, perfect, unblinking, or perhaps still awake. From above, the eye of the Sahara seems silent, but the closer you look, the louder it speaks. Satellite imagery has revealed something astonishing. This circular formation was once surrounded by flowing rivers and lakes. Ancient waterways can still be traced, winding through the desert like the veins of a long dead body. They all converge toward one place, the very center of the eye. If this were once an island, the sea would have reached it from the west. And indeed, the fossilized remains of marine life, shells, coral, and ocean sediments, have all been found across this desolate land. 12,000 years ago, this was not a desert. The Sahara was green, fertile, and full of life. It's called the African humid period, a time when monsoons swept far north, feeding massive rivers that poured into what is now endless sand. And in the middle of it all stood a circular plateau surrounded by water, a place that fits Plato's words more precisely than anywhere else on earth. In his dialogue, Timaeus, Plato wrote that Atlantis was a plain encircled by mountains to the north and open to the sea to the south. He described it as a land divided into rings of land and water, two of water, three of land, with a central island where the royal palace stood. The size, the orientation, even the distance from the mountains to the ocean, every measure in his account matches the dimensions of the Richat structure. For centuries, people searched for Atlantis in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, off Spain, in the Caribbean, near Antarctica. But what if they were looking in the wrong direction entirely? What if the continent didn't sink beneath the sea, but the sea itself disappeared? When scientists analyzed the rock layers within the eye, they found signs of extreme erosion, patterns carved by water, not wind. Circular fractures radiate from the center like ripples in a pond. This was once a place shaped by immense pressure, intense heat, and perhaps catastrophic change. A geological dome pushed upward by forces deep beneath the crust. But something about its symmetry, its scale, and its position continues to puzzle even the experts. No trace of volcanic activity has ever been found. No lava flows, no craters, and yet the land here is scorched as though burned from within. Could a natural disaster, like a meteor impact or a sudden tectonic collapse, have reshaped the landscape overnight? Or was this destruction something far older, the final echo of a forgotten age? Across Africa, ancient maps tell a strange story. The Egyptian priest Solon, whose writings inspired Plato, spoke of an empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a civilization that ruled vast territories before vanishing in a single day and night of misfortune. Some researchers believe that story may have originated from contact with North Africa, a memory of a kingdom that once thrived where the Sahara now lies. In Mauritania, among the nomadic Berbers, there are still legends of a great city that fell into the sand after the skies turned black and thunder shook the earth. They call it the place where the sea died. To them, it was not a myth, but a warning that even the greatest of worlds can vanish without leaving a trace. And yet, traces remain. In the sand under the dunes, small fragments of pottery, carved stones, and mysterious straight lines captured by high-resolution radar. Most are dismissed as natural formations, but when viewed together, they form patterns that seem anything but random. So, where does science end and legend begin? The Eye of the Sahara stands as both, a monument to nature's power and a mirror of humanity's oldest story. Its shape calls to something deep within us, a memory of cities lost, of oceans gone, of civilizations erased by time. If the Richat structure truly holds the remains of Atlantis, it would mean that history itself must be rewritten, that the world's most famous legend did not lie beneath the ocean, but beneath our very feet. And as the wind sweeps across this vast and empty land, you can almost hear the echo of that forgotten world. The sound of waves that no longer exist, breaking against the rings of a vanished city. At dawn, the Sahara seems harmless, but as the sun climbs, the air trembles, and the circular ridges of the eye sharpen into focus, like the ribs of something ancient, half buried and watching. A small team arrives, 2 geologists, an archaeologist, and a local guide. They move across the western ring with GPS scanners and drones. From the ground, it looks like chaos. From the air, perfect geometry. The geologist kneels beside layered stone and brushes away sand. The grains are rounded, polished by water, not wind. Everywhere they test, they find the same story. Erosion carved by flowing rivers, not desert storms. The guide smiles. His people, the Berbers, call this place the land that drank the sea. As drones sweep above, The images reveal faint lines beneath the dunes, rectangular shadows running along the inner ring, natural fractures perhaps, but their spacing, their direction toward the center, feels intentional. The archaeologist overlays them with Plato's plan of Atlantis. The match is almost uncomfortable. 12,000 years ago, the Sahara was green. Massive rivers flowed through this region. Ancient lakes dotted its plains. If the eye once stood amid those waters, it could have been a city built on land and sea at once, a design far ahead of its age. The archaeologist writes, no proof, but patterns insist. Science demands restraint, yet the desert keeps whispering in symbols. At midday, the heat turns violent. The team shelters beside the trucks and studies maps. Satellite data confirms buried channels leading west toward what was once the Atlantic shore. If these were navigable rivers, they could explain how an inland civilization reached the sea, and why Plato described its people as lords of both land and ocean. By dusk, they reached the inner ring, a raised platform of pale rock. Standing there, the symmetry is undeniable. Mountains frame the horizon exactly where Plato placed them, to the north and west. To the south, the plain opens, an ancient exit to the sea. The archaeologist draws a slow breath. He knows belief can be dangerous, but coincidence has limits. That night they camp near the center. The wind drops. The stars look close enough to touch. Around a small fire, the guide tells his grandfather's tale of a city that fell when the sky caught fire, of water that turned to dust in a single night. He never says Atlantis. He simply points toward the darkness and says, it was there. Morning brings evidence of another kind. After a night storm, new exposures gleam along a dune. A layer of compacted silt, once lake-bed mud, crumbles between the geologist's fingers. Fossilized shells lie trapped within. This was once a shore. The data grows heavier. Mineral samples confirm long-term water saturation. Magnetic scans hint at subsurface alignments, possibly walls or foundations swallowed by sand. Still, nothing is certain. Science lives between faith and skepticism. Back in camp, they examine the artifacts found so far. A shard of pottery, a piece of fired clay, a flake of stone. Individually, they are nothing. Together, they form a whisper of settlement, a human presence erased yet persistent. When the expedition ends, the archaeologist looks back from a ridge at the concentric horizon. He imagines the past as the desert once was. Rings of canals glimmering with sunlight, boats sliding between terraces, voices echoing in marble halls. Then silence. The sea retreats, and time begins its work. In the laboratory, weeks later, data fills screens and maps. The team prepares a report. The Richat Structure, probable hydrological center during the African humid period, possible evidence of early habitation, no definitive proof of artificial origin. Yet privately, none of them can forget the symmetry or the feeling that the desert remembers more than it reveals. Perhaps the eye of the Sahara is nothing but geology, a monument to pressure and erosion. Or perhaps it is both, a ruin and a relic of the earth itself, a city of rings turned to stone, its story half buried, half awake beneath the sand. As the camera pulls back, the eye fades into shadow, its circles glowing faintly under the setting sun. A question carved into the heart of the desert, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. The story of Atlantis has always ended the same way, with destruction. But in the Sahara, destruction did not come from the sea. It came from the sky. 12,000 years ago, Earth trembled through one of its sharpest climate shifts. The great ice sheets melted, oceans rose, and global winds changed direction. Across North Africa, storms collapsed into drought. The fertile plain that had fed generations began to die. Rivers dried to threads, Lakes withdrew like breath, and the land that had once glittered with water turned to dust. If there truly had been a city here, it would have been swallowed not by waves, but by heat, its harbors choked with silt, its gardens withering beneath an unrelenting sun. Archaeologists call it desertification. Ancient storytellers called it divine punishment. In a reconstruction imagined, through data and legend, the scene unfolds. A ringed city under a copper sky, its channels sparkling as merchants haul goods across bridges of stone. Children chase each other along marble quays. Farmers steer rafts through lotus fields. Then the weather changes, the wind thickens with dust. The horizon turns red, mountains rumble. The water retreats. And one morning, the ocean is simply gone. The sky burns for weeks. Ash mixes with sand until the sun fades to amber. Crops fail, animals vanish. The people scatter, some north toward the Mediterranean, others west following the ghost of the sea. They carry fragments, tools, stories, seeds, maps of a world that no longer exists. Generations later, those fragments become myths, told beside new fires under new stars. A name survives, Atlantis. No one remembers where it was, only that it was lost to catastrophe. Modern science now sees what the ancients described in metaphor. The African humid period ended abruptly, perhaps within a few centuries. Satellite data reveals thousands of buried channels frozen in place mid-flow. Dust core samples from the Atlantic show the same date. A sudden bloom of iron-rich particles lifted from a drying Sahara. To the planet, it was climate mechanics. To those who lived it, it was the end of the world. Today, geologists map those transitions with quiet precision. They drill into the eye's concentric layers, reading the language of mineral rings like pages in a diary. Each color tells a chapter. Sandstone formed in shallow water, limestone born from vanished lakes, basalt scorched by unimaginable heat. The record is neither myth nor proof. It is the echo of a system collapsing under its own sky. Archaeologists return each season, chasing that intersection between catastrophe and memory. They walk where ancient shorelines curve, where a single black stone might be all that remains of a pier. The desert shifts daily. Dunes crawl a meter each year, erasing yesterday's discoveries. Yet the symmetry holds. Even stripped of water, the rings still mimic order, a geometry so deliberate it defies erosion. At twilight, one researcher stands in the central basin and watches dust storms rise like ghosts. He imagines the same horizon 10,000 years ago. Palm forests, herds of gazelle, the shimmer of water against white stone. He imagines the day the wind changed and everything living understood, for the first time, that it would die. A civilization can vanish in silence. The earth does not mourn, it only rearranges. But ruins are not the only fossils of memory. Culture travels farther than stone. In Mali, elders speak of a people who built in circles because time itself was round. In Egypt, temple reliefs show gods emerging from a western land beyond the desert. In Greece, philosophers wrote of knowledge that came from the farthest west, where the sea once met the sand. Each fragment points backward toward the same vanishing point, a memory too consistent to ignore. Perhaps this is how the legend survived. A chain of retellings carried by refugees of climate, woven into myths of floods and punishment. Plato's Atlantis, the Egyptian Zep Tepi, the Berber Garden of the Sea, different names for the same womb. The eye of the desert may not be their cradle, but it could be their tomb. Science still resists the word Atlantis. It prefers terms like Paleo Lake System and Uplift Erosion Dome. Yet even scientists admit the mysteries pull. The geometry, the chronology, the marine fossils found hundreds of kilometers from any coast. None of it fits neatly inside textbook explanations. The Richat structure sits like an unanswered equation carved into stone. At night, infrared cameras scan the ground for temperature anomalies that might mark buried voids. Most return blank. But occasionally, faint heat lines trace across the sand in smooth arcs, as if the earth remembers corridors that once carried water or fire, or both. The next morning, the team reviews footage. Sand rippling, dunes breathing, sunlight catching edges of unseen forms. A geologist writes in the log, erosion model incomplete. Concentric order remains inexplicable. Another adds quietly, nature has no need for perfection. Silence follows. In the reconstruction, time collapses once more. The camera drifts over a drowned world of memory, rings of canals filling with wind instead of tide, columns tilting into emptiness, an empire dissolving grain by grain. The voice of the narrator returns, slow, reflective, almost a whisper. The ocean did not claim Atlantis. The desert did. The shot widens. Modern dunes stretch toward the horizon, the same curves repeating to infinity. Where water once shimmered, heat now dances. The eye lies still, its circles fading into twilight. To those who seek Atlantis in the sea, it offers only silence. But to those who listen closely, it tells another story. One where fire replaced flood, and civilization vanished not beneath waves, but within them. And somewhere beneath that endless dust, beneath layers of stone that remember water, there may still rest the shape of a city that refused to die quietly. Its heartbeat fossilized in concentric rings, its name carried only by wind. The wind never stops in the Sahara. It drifts through the rings of the eye like breath through an ancient instrument, reshaping the dunes, whispering through stone corridors that may once have been quays. At noon, it glows white. By dusk, it turns the whole horizon red. Each gust is a reminder that nothing here is fixed, neither sand nor memory. Today, the eye of the Sahara is no longer just a mystery for dreamers. It has become a scientific riddle. Archaeologists, geologists, climatologists, all are drawn to this place that seems too symmetrical for chance. From orbit, satellites record subtle variations in temperature and reflectivity. Spectral scanners detect lines hidden beneath the dunes, curved just enough to suggest that once water obeyed a human plan. Every season brings new measurements, new models, and new questions that refuse simple answers. In a lab thousands of kilometers away, samples of rock and sediment lie in sterile trays. Under microscopes, grains of quartz reveal thin films of salt, proof they once lay beneath shallow water. Fragments of clay show heat exposure at temperatures higher than nature could produce here. And tiny shells, oceanic species long extinct, linger in layers far inland. Each fragment is a whisper from another world, repeating the same sentence. The desert remembers the sea. The data accumulates, and patterns begin to emerge. One simulation shows how shifting winds could have drained a vast inland lake. Another suggests a sudden tectonic uplift, raising the plain into a dome, the shape we see now. Geologists call it coincidence. Historians call it memory disguised as landform. But everyone who visits agrees on one thing. Standing in the eye feels less like observing geology and more like standing inside a story that refuses to end. In a dim lecture hall, the archaeologist from the expedition presents his findings. No grand claims, no discoveries to change the world, only careful evidence. On the screen, images alternate between satellite scans and Plato's ancient map. The match is unsettlingly close. When the lights return, the room is silent. Finally, a voice asks, "Do you believe it's real?" He pauses before answering. "Real," he says. "The place exists. The question is whether the memory that built it was human, or the planet's own." Outside the building, night falls over a modern city. The streets buzz with neon, engines, and motion, the noise of a civilization certain of its permanence. Yet somewhere beneath all this certainty, the same cycle repeats: growth, mastery, decline, forgetting. Atlantis was not the first. It will not be the last. Back in the desert, the new expedition continues its slow, deliberate work. Drones map the ridges in millimeter detail. Ground penetrating radar sweeps the central basin, tracing shapes buried beneath meters of sand. Each discovery feels like a heartbeat, faint but persistent. In one scan, the outline of a long, straight corridor appears where no natural feature should exist. It could be a fracture line, or it could be the last surviving spine of a vanished city. The team collects sediment cores, slicing time into layers. Pollen from long dead plants, traces of carbon that might be from fire, microfragments of pigment that could belong to pottery. Under the microscope, one scientist murmurs, "It's as if someone built, burned, rebuilt, and then walked away." No one replies. The silence of the desert extends into the lab like an echo. Later, at sunset, the archaeologist climbs to the highest ridge of the eye. The rings spiral around him in every direction, vast, precise, impossible. He tries to imagine them filled again. Blue channels glinting under the sun, terraces covered in gardens, boats drifting between rings of stone. He imagines a civilization that believed the world itself was circular, time, life, and fate all turning endlessly, each revolution both an ending and a beginning. Maybe that was Atlantis' greatest secret, not its power, but its geometry. Darkness falls. From above, the eye glows faintly under starlight, its ridges reflecting silver like ripples on black glass. Satellites glide overhead, their sensors blinking like mechanical stars. Humanity's newest eyes stare down at its oldest question. If the legend of Atlantis survives, it is because it speaks to something older than myth, our fear of losing everything we build, and our hope that meaning endures. Back in the research base, data fills the monitors. Sonar maps, erosion charts, temperature curves. To the computers, it is all numbers. To the people watching, it is scripture written in code. Every data set feels like a message half translated, the Earth trying to tell its story in a language we're only beginning to learn. In the final sequence, the camera drifts higher and higher until the entire eye fits within the frame. A perfect spiral glowing under the first light of dawn. The narrator's voice softens, resonant, certain. Atlantis may never have been a city. It may have been a mirror, a reflection of every civilization that believed itself eternal. The sea did not bury it, time did, and the desert kept it secret until we were ready to listen. The view widens again. The Sahara stretches to the horizon, waves of sand frozen mid-motion, the faint trace of a river long gone. The sound fades until only the wind remains. It moves through the concentric rings like breath through an ancient lung, and the eye, patient and unblinking, keeps watch. Perhaps we have not found Atlantis, the voice concludes, but something greater, proof that even in silence, the earth remembers us. The final shot lingers on the center of the eye, a perfect circle of light surrounded by darkness. Then slowly, it fades to black.